just a little bit. In regard to officer-involved shootings, does the BCA, I believe you testified, does the BCA work on those at the request of local agencies, or do you have a separate jurisdiction?
At the request. The BCA agents have statewide jurisdiction throughout the state for any crimes in Minnesota statutes. However, uses of deadly force, officer-involved shootings, we're not required by law to investigate those. Sheriffs and police chiefs can decide who they want to investigate those. They tend to call the BCA. We've done them over the years, more and more each year, and we're now kind of the preferred agency. However, it's not required that we do so. It's at the request of a chief or a sheriff.
Okay. From a scene response and investigative role, why are these cases handled differently than typical cases within particular law enforcement agencies?
Well, we call these cases critical incidents. They're not always shootings. They're uses of deadly force usually. So they're high-profile cases. And by calling in an objective third-party organization to the investigation, it allows the chief, the sheriff, to step back and let another organization investigate it, handle the case all the way to its conclusion, all the way to court if need be.
Avoid conflicts, be independent, etc.?
That is correct. So there's no appearance of bias.
Okay. When an incident of this type occurs, is it then like you get a phone call from the chief of police or a commander or something like that?
Usually law enforcement will call our operations center, which is 24 hours, or if they know us, which many do know the agents in my unit, they'll call us directly and they'll say, we just had a critical incident, we just had a shooting, and then they'll ask what to do next. We ask them certain questions, and that helps us coordinate our response.
If the BCA is assigned a particular case, does the local agency have any role in the case?
Oh, absolutely. Because these cases occur throughout the state, we're responding. I have agents throughout the state, so it can take us anywhere from a half hour to 3 hours to get there. So in the meantime, the local agencies there, we rely on them to secure the scene, make sure that it's properly protected with tape, barriers, whatever need be to protect the evidence, and keep out citizens, media, anybody who might disturb the evidence. That's required. We need them to do that because we just don't have the personnel or the quickness to get there. And then we also need them to coordinate getting witnesses out of the scene and back to the police department or the sheriff's office so that we can interview them and talk to them.
Okay. Once the BCA arrives, does the local agency still have a role?
Yes. So even after we've arrived on scene, there's a lot of information that we're still gathering to figure out what happened, how many people are involved. It's always an ever-changing process. As soon as we arrive, more and more information becomes known to us. So as we are liaisoning with that agency, we're asking them certain things like, do they have body cameras? Do they have squad video? Is there evidence they collected? There's certain documents, reports, records that we're going to ask for. So throughout the process, we are asking certain things of that agency.
In the years since you've been at the BCA, how many officer-involved shooting cases have you worked on?
I have worked on, meaning assisted in some way, well over 100, and I've been the case agent for probably 24.
Okay. Can you describe what is entailed by being a case agent or lead agent?
Certainly. These cases are not typical cases where maybe one person or two agents can work them. They really take multiple agents. So the case agent is just the person who's the lead, who tries to take the lead initially to speak to the involved officers, speak to the family of the civilians involved, to kind of give them both a picture of what it is we're going to do. And then multiple agents will do all sorts of duties, interviews, evidence collection, however that may be, and it could be throughout the state for one incident. They will do their own reports. Those reports will come in, and the case agent's job is kind of watch those reports come in, see what evidence is being collected, watch the videos that can be watched, and make sure that pretty much the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed for the case file.
I'd like to talk about how a case begins in your unit. Can you describe a typical protocol for how the BCA responds to the scene and what they do at the scene in a typical officer-involved shooting?
Typically we're called, usually they're at nighttime or the weekends, and I try to get as much information as I can, and as I said, it's always fluid, but I need to know how many people to respond, so I'll try to figure that out first. Once we know how many people to respond, we need to know the area, the address, obviously, indoor, outdoor, those sort of things. I also need to notify my administration, who needs to know certain information. I have to notify the crime scene team. At the BCA, our crime scene team is comprised of mainly scientists, not police officers. So they're not sworn. They're scientists who trained in collecting evidence. So I notify them so that they can respond with the appropriate personnel they need to get to the scene and do what they need to do. Once we start to figure out a little bit of what's happening, I'll usually direct certain agents to the police department or the sheriff's office, because there's work to be done there, and then others will go to the scene itself because there's work to be done there.
So it's you'd agree that it's essentially information dependent. How many agents, where you need to send them, what do they need to do, etc.
Yes, sir.
I now want to turn to April 11th of 2021. Do you recall that day?
I do.
Were you working that day?
No, it was Sunday.
Did you receive some information that prompted a response from you at approximately 2:45?
Yes, I was advised by our 24-hour operations line at the BCA that the Hennepin County Dispatch wanted to connect me to Commander Tony Grunig of the Brooklyn Center Police Department in regards to an officer-involved shooting. I called Tony, got some preliminary information from him, which was, he told me that one of his officers...
Okay, just don't relate things that people have told you, okay?
Okay.
All right. You may continue.
You'd agree that Commander Grunig provided you information, correct?
Yes.
And then on the basis of that information, you decided what was an appropriate response from the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, correct?
That is correct.
And did you make all required notifications of on your team?
Yes, I did. Based on what I learned, I directed some agents to the Brooklyn Center Police Department and others to the area of 63rd and Catherine in Brooklyn Center for what I was told was a shooting scene.
Okay, I know this is kind of difficult, but would you please refrain from repeating things that other people have told you?
Okay.
Okay. Do you want to move on, counsel?
I will. If the objections persist, I will ask for a sidebar here.
All right.
When did you arrive at the scene?
I believe I got the phone call about 2:45. I got there about 3:45, so about an hour.
Okay. At the time of your arrival, was there any other personnel from the BCA present?
No, I was the first one.
When you arrived, how many individuals from the BCA were present?
Just myself?
Yep. Can you describe what you saw as you arrived?
I parked close to the scene, got out of the car, and was immediately contacted by Commander Tony Grunig.
Okay. And did Commander Grunig then convey information about what he knew occurred?
Well, you just came inside.
And did he then give you a walkthrough of the crime scene?
Yes, he did.
And do you remember the significant observations that you made on your initial arrival at the scene of the crime scene?
Yes.
What were those?
I walked to a Buick that was crashed and up on a curb. In front of the Buick and to the left was a deceased male who had some clothing removed and some medical apparatus were nearby. I could observe he had a gunshot wound to the chest area. There were 2 Hennepin County deputies standing nearby. I asked them if they had a tent. They said we did get a tent put up immediately so that we could cover his body. I then started to ask Tony Grunig some more questions about personnel involved at the scene, which would help me direct what to do next.
The people he identified as involved officers, did you know their location at that time?
Yes.
Okay, and that was a Brooklyn Center Police Department?
Yes, it was.
Okay. After you spoke to Commander Grunig, what did you do next?
I began to contact my agents, and I needed to advise them of the size of the area, what needed to be done. First and foremost was the canvassing. I also observed what appeared to be a family member inside the perimeter. I went over to those people who looked like family, introduced myself, and found out that they were related to the decedent. I told them who I was. I told them what our role at the BCA was. And even though they were inside of the perimeter, they were not near evidence or the decedent. So I allowed them to stay in that position, stay there, so that we could do our job at the crime scene.
Did other members of your team arrive at that point?
Yes, they did.
And did that include forensic scientists?
Yes, the crime scene team did arrive.
What tasks did the crime scene team take up at that point?
One of the things that I do as I'm there collecting information is then as soon as the crime scene team gets there, the team leader will ask me what I've learned since the time I spoke to her on the phone to ask for her to respond, and then by the time she arrives. So obviously there's more information I gathered. I relayed that to her, and at that point I did know that there was a traffic stop that started it, and that was farther down from where the crash scene was and where the body was. So I advised her of that. I did not know much more as far as evidence collection, meaning how many bullets were fired, what direction, those kind of things that a team would need to know and usually ask me. I didn't have those answers at that time, but I did tell her what I did know.
Did they, to your knowledge, follow the protocols that they have, such as photographing the scene, searching for evidence, documenting the scene, etc.?
That is correct.
Okay. And did other licensed law enforcement agents arrive as well?
Yes, I did have some more agents arrive, and they took up some duties such as interviewing the family and canvassing neighborhoods.
The crime scene team, are they led by a particular individual?
Yes.
And who was that on that day?
On that date, it was Melissa Lauren.
Melissa Lauren. And the agents that arrived, did those agents include agents such as Brent Peterson?
Yes.
Okay. And as the supervisor of this team, as those efforts were taking place to canvass and to search the area for evidence, did you oversee their actions?
Yes.
Could you describe to the jury what canvassing means?
Sure. Canvassing means that we go door to door and knock on the neighbors' doors, whether they appear home or come out and talk or not. Hopefully we can make contact. We'll ask them if they saw or heard anything, because there's eyewitnesses and there are ear witnesses, and they will usually tell us. So we identify them. If they did hear or see, then we will do a taped interview with them so we can record that statement. We also ask if anybody has outdoor cameras on their home, security cameras. If they do, we ask if we can get a copy or we'll get a search warrant for those. We also ask if they recorded the incident at all on their own personal phones or devices, and if so, we will get copies of those.
Okay. Now, you previously testified that you had covered the body of the decedent. Let's get this out of the way. Was the decedent ultimately identified?
Yes, sir.
And his name was?
Daunte Wright.
Okay. You had testified that you had covered Daunte Wright's body with a tent. I don't think just those words alone would help the jury understand what you mean. At this time, pardon me, do you know that there was a photograph taken of this tent?
Yes.
At this time, the state offers Exhibit 98.
Any objection to Exhibit 98?
No.
Exhibit 98 will be admitted into evidence, and you may picture it.
Special Agent Phil, I'm showing you Exhibit 98. Could you describe what you see in this image?
Yes. I'm standing myself in front of the unmarked squad. I have a hat on.
Agent Phil, could you move that mic? I see you're moving to look at the photograph. I just want to make sure the jury hears you. Please proceed.
I'm talking to one of my agents, Colleen Myrie, and I also have the crime scene team leader, Melissa Lauren, to my right, and then there's a crime scene team member to her right.
Okay. And is the tent that you testified about in this image?
Yes, that is the tent that the Hennepin County Sheriff's Office erected for us.
Okay, and that is the tent that covered Daunte Wright's body after you arrived at the scene?
Yes, sir.
During the time when the crime lab team was looking for evidence, did they direct their attention to a particular location? Was there something in the crime scene to which the crime lab directed their attention?
The car itself, generally, is where we were working to start.
The white Buick, which was located in the image there?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And why did they direct their attention toward that?
There was a lot of blood inside the vehicle. There was a lot of blood inside the vehicle. It was clear to us that Daunte Wright had been in that vehicle. We did not know what occurred at the traffic stop. So one of the things we're looking for after we get a search warrant is a weapon, to see if there are any weapons involved. So that's what we were looking for.
And was at least some evidence of a fired gun located in the vehicle?
Yes,
And what was that evidence?
it was a fired gun cartridge.
Cartridge. Okay. And what's the significance of finding a cartridge?
Objection, irrelevant at this point.
The objections overruled. You may answer.
The significance of finding one cartridge would help to know that a bullet was fired, a gun was fired at least once. We did not know how many times, so one was significant, but we didn't know if there were more to find.
Where was the cartridge located? Do you recall?
In the driver's seat, I believe, in blood.
Now, as you were on the scene with your members of the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, did another agency at the scene? Did another agency arrive at the scene to conduct additional investigation?
Yes,
And what agency was that?
the Hennepin County Medical Examiner.
Okay. And when did the Hennepin County Medical Examiner arrive?
I'm not sure at the time.
Okay. And what occurred after the Hennepin County Medical Examiner came to the scene?
I was there when they arrived, the investigator and the doctor. We do not generally touch or move decedents until they arrive, because those bodies are in custody of the medical examiner as evidence so that they can do an autopsy. So we will not roll or move or touch until they arrive. So once they arrive, then all of us went inside the tent to observe the body.
Okay. And ultimately, did the medical examiner take that body with them?
Yes, they did.
After the medical examiner took Mr. Wright's body, did the BCA continue their work in this case until at least 7:30 p.m.?
Yes, we did.
Okay. And approximately 7:37, is that when the BCA left?
That's when we cleared. I was the last BCA person to leave.
Okay. While you were at the crime scene, did you receive any updates from other agents at the Brooklyn Center Police Department that assisted you in directing your investigation?
Yes, I did.
And what information did you receive that assisted you in directing your investigation?
Objection, hearsay.
It's not a hearsay purpose, Your Honor. It's
Objection is...
All right. Okay. Just make sure, Agent, not to relate anything that somebody told you. Okay? All right. Could you restate your question, counsel?
Did you learn, based on communication with your other agents, that a firearm was recovered? In fact, 2 firearms were recovered?
At the Brooklyn Center Police Department.
Yeah. Did you also learn that body-worn camera footage was reviewed by your agents?
Yes, sir, at the Brooklyn Center Police Department.
Did you also learn that a taser was collected from the Brooklyn Center Police Department?
Yes, sir.
After you left the scene, what were the next steps in the BCA's investigation?
After clearing the scene, our priority was to take the evidence back to our headquarters in St. Paul, and that included the Buick vehicle so that we can do a full search there. We don't like to search vehicles generally out on scene. We like to bring them to our garage area where we can control the weather, control the lights, and collect any evidence that we find much more safely and without losing things on scene. So evidence went back to the headquarters, and then I also stayed in contact with Brooklyn Center regarding things like body camera collection and squad video collection.
Okay. And the body-worn camera and the squad video, those were ultimately reviewed?
Yes, they were.
Did you also direct agents from the BCA to conduct interviews of any individual with material information about this case?
Yes, we will interview anybody who is willing and wants to talk to us, citizens, officers, anybody.
Okay. Did you request any forensic testing of recovered evidence in this case?
Yes.
Could you describe some of the forensic testing?
Some of the testing that was done was by the firearms section of our laboratory. So they will test the firearm. They will test to see if it matches casings, bullets, if they're recovered from the scene or from a person at autopsy.
Was an autopsy performed on this case? Yes.
Yes.
And was evidence recovered from that autopsy and brought to the BCA?
Yes.
Now, following your actions on the physical evidence and on the video evidence, did you also collect some documentation or paperwork from the Brooklyn Center Police Department?
Yes, we did.
And did that include training records and employment records?
Yes, we request those for most uses of deadly force.
Okay. Why do you collect training records?
We collect training records to make sure that whatever weapons or tools or devices were used were in accordance with the department policy, and if so, when were they last trained on them to use them. It's a pretty important thing that prosecutors request.
Okay. Agent Phil, you've discussed a number of actions here that were taken by other individuals, other investigators, other scientists. Are you aware that there are other BCA agents and scientists who are going to testify about their roles, their respective roles in this case over the course of this trial?
I am aware, yes.
Okay. No further questions at this time.
We have no questions.
All right. Thank you, Agent. You may step down. All right, members of the jury, we're going to adjourn for the day, and we'll start up at 9 o'clock on Monday. But I want to remind you of the instructions I gave you earlier regarding your conduct as jurors. Please keep these in mind each time we recess and when we adjourn for the day. As I explained earlier, it is essential that you follow these rules to ensure the fairness of this trial to all parties. While I will...
Oh well, haha. I thought it was gonna. I just saw it on, so I started streaming it. Sorry, guys. I didn't realize it was at the end. But we'll watch. I'll stream it again on Monday for you guys. Maybe we'll have to see. Depends. I'm trying to clean up around the house today, and just be lazy. So, all right, guys. Well, I'll be on in 5.5 hours for my show tonight.
not
All right, guys. Catch y'all later.